Hey guys, I hope all is well. Thank you for joining me for this Truth Talk episode. In today's episode, we're going to be once again talking about the Titan submersible, as I found some new interesting information that changes my perspective on the matter. Let's get right into it. A couple days back, we spoke about the submersible called the Titan that contained 5 people traveling 12,000 feet underwater to visit the Titanic wreckage. As we all know by now, the Titan submersible lost communication with those on land, prompting a search and rescue mission in hopes of finding the submersible. The search lasted 4 days and ended with a horrible but expected outcome. Those on board sadly did not make it. The Coast Guard believed that the submersible imploded not long after the dive when they reached the Titanic, as they believed they found wreckage from the Titan. This story captured the media, and for the 4 days the Titan was lost under the sea, the world was on the edge of their seats, waiting for the outcome. While this was going on, many of you guys were contacting me, requesting I look into the situation, as you guys felt there was more to the story. Like I said in my last video, I looked into it with the information that was available at the time, and in that video, I stated that I felt this was just a result of a greedy corporation cutting costs to maximize gain. They built a faulty submersible that experts had warned OceanGate about. However, after further researching and taking a closer look into the situation, it appears that I missed crucial evidence that points to something far more sinister taking place. I must admit, what I found changes everything, and I now believe there's more to the story. The first important detail about all of this is the Titanic sinking itself. The Titanic was a British passenger ocean liner that sunk after hitting a massive iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean on April 15, 1912. There were over 2,200 passengers on board, and over 1,500 people passed away in the cold blue ocean. What most people don't know about the Titanic is that it's actually believed to be connected to the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank. The Federal Reserve was signed into law back in 1913, just 1 year after the Titanic sunk. In 1913, the US Congress created the Federal Reserve, which established a central banking system. This central banking system was created to manipulate and control the national money supply, meaning to control the worth of money and how much of it would end up being printed. The government introduced this to the world and promised that it would balance the issues that were being created by the gold standard. The Federal Reserve was largely being pushed by a few very wealthy and powerful men, one being J.P. Morgan, the creator of one of the biggest banks in the world, Chase Bank. J.P. Morgan made it his priority to establish a centralized banking system, claiming that it would prevent billionaires like him from having too much power, when in reality, it did the opposite. Back in the 1910s, there were a few billionaires that were opposing the Federal Reserve, as they knew what its true purpose was. J.P. Morgan had spun the Federal Reserve as an act for the people, when in reality, it mostly benefited big investors, banks, and businesses, not the actual people at all. 3 men that were opposing the Federal Reserve were Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Straus, and John Jacob Astor. Coincidentally, all 3 of these men passed away on board the Titanic ship. 3 mega wealthy men who had unlimited power and probably were going to be the only ones putting up a fight against the Federal Reserve, and they all went out together on the same ship. Just 1 year later, what they were opposing was signed into law. Things get even more interesting when you realize who owned the Titanic. The Titanic was owned by no other than J.P. Morgan himself, the man who was pushing for the Federal Reserve, the man who these 3 men were opposing. Their passing benefited J.P. Morgan the most. Where things get even more evident is when you realize J.P. Morgan was supposed to be on the Titanic the day it sunk. JP actually canceled his plans to get on the Titanic just 3 hours before its departure. How convenient is it that JP canceled his plans to get on the cruise while his direct opposition were exclusively invited to get on the Titanic and all met their end? Many people believe the Titanic was purposely put on a path where there would be a lot of icebergs in the water. They believe they rigged the Titanic to malfunction during its voyage, using the iceberg story as a cover-up. To me, this all makes perfect sense, especially when you realize the Titanic sinking was foreshadowed 14 years before it happened in a book called Fertility, or The Wreck of the Titan. The similarities between the Titan and the Titanic are almost unbelievable. In the book, the ship was called the Titan. In real life, it was called the Titanic. Both the Titan and the Titanic collided with an iceberg on the starboard side on a cold night in April, some 900 miles from New York. Both the Titanic and the Titan claimed to have been unsinkable. Both the ships looked pretty similar and were both the biggest ships of its time. We know the elite love foreshadowing their plans using forms of entertainment, and this is exactly what it appears to be. We know exactly what this was, an orchestrated plan to get rid of those that are not following their orders. Whenever they have any kind of opposition, they eliminate them at any means and then call it a terrible accident. Those men who were a part of the elite were opposing the plans the other elites wanted to happen. They were taken care of, and JP and the other elitists got what they wanted all along. This book just so happened to foreshadow what was going to happen on the Titanic, and interestingly enough, the ship in the book was called the Titan. Fast forward 111 years later, the company OceanGate's Titan submersible meets an eerie similar fate as those on the Titanic while visiting the Titanic wreckage. Interesting fact, the OceanGate CEO, who was actually on board the Titan and passed away that day, was actually married to Wendy Rush. Wendy, if you could believe this, is actually a direct descendant of a wealthy couple that passed away on the Titanic. Isra Strauss was one of the men opposing the Federal Reserve against JP Morgan. All of this to me sticks out, but things get even more interesting the deeper I go. Something that caught my attention was that a billionaire by the name of Jay Bloom was supposed to be on the Titan that day instead of Shahzada Dawood and his teenage son. Jay Bloom called off the trip 2 days before, and the seats were then sold to Shahzada instead. What's interesting about this is that Shahzada was actually connected to the World Economic Forum. Shahzada Dawood was a member of the World Economic Forum's family business community. For those who aren't aware, the World Economic Forum is pushing for something called the Great Reset, which is being compared to the New World Order. To make this even more interesting, when I looked into OceanGate, I discovered that the Rothschilds are actually connected to the company. David D. Rothschild joined OceanGate's board of directors back in 2012. For the longest, people have associated the Rothschilds with the central banking system as they believe they were the hidden hand behind the Federal Reserve. The Rothschilds benefited greatly from it, just like JP Morgan did. Now, adding all of this together made it clear to me what happened with the Titan was far more sinister than is being reported. Not only are the Rothschilds involved, but also someone a part of the World Economic Forum. Too much going on for this just to be a tragic accident. People online are also pointing to 2 episodes, one from Family Guy and another from The Simpsons, that they believe is foreshadowing the OceanGate Titan situation. In the episode of The Simpsons, they show Homer get into a submersible searching for treasure in a wrecked ship underwater. We see Homer arrive at the ship, grab the treasure, and on the way back up, get stuck, running out of oxygen. In this episode, they show the submersible traveling to a shipwreck and then ending in tragedy. The Simpsons have long foreshadowed many incidents, and it seems they have done it again with this episode. In the Family Guy episode, we see Stewie and Brian get into a submersible and travel to the Titanic wreckage to pant a billionaire who was underwater. Stewie and Brian accidentally take out the billionaire when they try to pant him. Again, they show the submersible diving to the Titanic wreckage and it ending in tragedy. It does appear the elite once again used their media to foreshadow what was soon to come. But what was the reason to take those out on the Titan? Well, I believe it could be because of a few different reasons. For starters, I believe the entire situation was a massive distraction needed to get eyes off the Epstein scandal that is currently happening with Chase. While everyone was distracted and consumed with those trapped underwater, it was revealed that Chase was fined $4 million for deleting emails linked to Epstein. Chase once again managed to avoid massive backlash from its consumers and the public about its relationship with Jeffrey. It's interesting how every time an update gets released about this situation, the media doesn't show it much attention and the world is always distracted by something else. Last time, it was Andrew Tate's obvious staged arrest. This time is a submersible situation that has everybody consumed. It is not a coincidence that this information was released to the public while the public wasn't paying any attention to it. If the masses found out Chase was tied to Jeffrey, it would have a terrible outcome for the bank. This is why they make sure this information is kept from gaining too much attention. I still wondered, why were these men picked to be on the submersible? I believe just like the Titanic, these men might have opposed plans in motion by the elite. It could be possible that Shahzada Dawood could have made himself a target for something he did or didn't do, a part of the World Economic Forum. One thing is for sure, there's too much evidence pointing to something far more sinister taking place with this incident. The fact that this incident is tied directly to the Titanic wreckage, and the Titanic wreckage was foreshadowed in a book about a ship called the Titan, lets you know this is all connected to the Masons' game of power and control. We know those who run our world have no issue sacrificing their own to get their desired results. Those on a submersible were on it because they were chosen for this fate by the elite who run our world. Well, that's it for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I just want to give a special shout out to the Truth Movement members. I truly appreciate every single one of you. If you'd like to further support the channel, join the Truth Movement, or you can join me on Patreon where I drop exclusive videos monthly. The link would be in the description. Another way you can further support the channel is by checking out the Truth Fish store and seeing if you find anything you like. Every purchase you make goes directly to helping the channel and furthering Truth Records. Also, please leave a comment on your thoughts below and on any future topics you would like to see me cover on my channel. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you can be notified when I drop new videos. If you like this video, please leave a like as it helps other people find these videos. You can also find me on TikTok and Instagram and follow me there for more truth. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.